Manchester Community Schools. We're now going to hold a public hearing on the 2022 school district budget. Patrons and taxpayers may express support or concern for the proposed budget that was properly advertised on September 3rd, 2021 via Indiana Gateway and the School Corporation website. The CPF and bus replacement plans were also advertised via the Indiana Gateway on September 3rd, 2021 and the corporation website. Our budget consultant, Mrs. Randy Libby, will present the anticipated 2022 budget and its impact on taxpayers for operations and debt service funds. We all rise and do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll turn the meeting over to Randy. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. So usually what I do with this public hearing is we went really in depth in August meeting, right? We go through all of the details, the nitty gritty. And so this is a part where I'm going to open it up with a few changes that we made to the capital projects plan, but the budget hasn't changed since we discussed it in August, and the bus replacement plan hasn't changed since we discussed it in August. So if you don't mind pulling up the capital projects plan, then we'll open it up for questions. So based on feedback from our new athletic director, are you able to zoom in on that, Missy? So based on feedback from our new athletic director, our high school principal, our facilities, Jack, and some other components, we made some changes to the capital projects plan to include items for the Performing Arts Center, tennis, track, and some other athletic facility needs. Not sure if I can see this very well. And so there are many other things that are listed on the capital projects plan. Those are in place to make sure that we have the most flexible plan. If we need to purchase a scissor lift in the middle of the year, it's already in the plan. By no means is that absolutely going to happen, but the board has the flexibility to make that decision in the middle of the year and purchase that scissor lift or mower, for example. And so those were just the few changes that were made to the capital projects plan since our meeting in August, and I'd be glad to open it up if there are any questions.
Do we have a copy
You
of that?
can go back to the Form 3, Missy, because that's the overall budget.
Do we have a copy of that? Do you know?
This wasn't in our packet, was it?
Yes.
It is?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, this was in your packet. So this is the Form 3. I'll just go through the forms just for those of you that weren't able to see the board pack before the meeting. So this is the Form 3. The Form 3 is going to be the advertisement that goes out to the taxpayers that you had just presented, Dave, on Gateway. This was also listed on the website. And so this gives an overview of, if you scroll down just a little bit, Missy, the budget proposals for debt service, education, the operations fund, as well as the proposed levies and the rates. We anticipate, once the DLGF works the budget, that these levies and rates will decrease, but they will not have an impact to the overall tax rate. We won't see an increase to the tax rate from year 2021. So if we go on to the bus replacement plan, this was also presented in the August meeting. On the second page is where those buses are listed. The first column there, beyond, if you zoom in on the very center of it, I apologize. The first two buses listed there are on the plan to be replaced in 2022. We also have a lease on 2 of our buses, and so there's lease payments listed down a little bit below in calendar year 2022. Again, there was no changes made to that from what we presented in August. And then the capital projects plan is anything capital in nature that's going to be $10,000 or more in equipment or $10,000 or more in a project type acquisition. So for example, the track needs resurfaced, that's gonna be over $10,000. That's listed here. We've added a little bit of a buffer from what we were proposed on a quote recently, as well as tennis. There is performing arts, some repairs to be made. There's going to be carpet, painting, et cetera, some routine type items that are gonna be put back into the capital projects plan that we've been discussing with Jack and the building principals. So those are in the plan to start getting summer work done for 2022. And then after the close of this public hearing, if there are no further questions, we will bring this back in October for your adoption. So once the adopted budget will be presented in October, it will then be sent on to the DLGF. The DLGF will work it and likely will have that back to us with our proposed 1782 notice by the end of the calendar year.
Any questions, board? I'd entertain a motion to close the 2022 budget hearing.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Raymer, second by Mr. Shaw. All in favor, signify aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Now, we need a motion to open the SEA 390 hearing in accordance with Indiana Code 20-29-6-1.
So moved.
Mr. Brubaker,
I'll second.
Mr. Raymer seconded. All in favor to open the hearing on the SEA 390?
Aye.
Motion, Mr. Booker? We're voting? You in favor? Okay, thank you. Motion carries.
Sorry.
That's all right. We will now receive any public comment about teacher salaries, teacher wages, fringe benefits, including accident, sickness, health, life, disability, retirement, and paid time off as permitted to be bargained. No public comment? Mr. Sarber? I'm sure you can. I just wanted to make sure the representatives of the MTAs were.
Yeah, Jody Sarber, teacher at the high school and one of our bargaining team members. I think we're just optimistic for the potential with some of the money that has been pushed into education, and hopefully gets used in the right areas. As I know, all teachers would express the same concerns and stresses over the last, year and a half, 2 years with COVID and all the extra demand. So anyway, excited to work with administration and come to hopefully a good resolution with the contract next year. So.
Thanks, Jody. Any board comments? Okay, I'd entertain a motion to close the SEA 390 hearing.
So moved.
Mr. Booker?
I'll second.
Mr. Raymer? All in favor of closing the hearings, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay. Going to call the regular board meeting to order at 6:10. We can dispense with the roll call. Emergency additions and deletions. We had John Kaufman, volunteer girls basketball assistant coach that was added since the agenda was published. Jen Birch, an assistant girls basketball coach. Heather Turflinger, an assistant girls basketball coach. And 6.1 minutes. At this time, we'd hear a hearing of patrons. Comments about agenda items only, please. No public comments? Okay. At this time, I'd like to present Oscar Gutierrez from Boundary Management Consultants and Dennis Otten from, I knew I was going to forget, Bose, McKinney, and Evans.
Thank you, Board President, Board Superintendent, public. Thank you for officially having us as your municipal advisors, and on behalf of Dennis as their attorneys. Also on the line, we have Landon Boehm, who is going to be acting as underwriter on this transaction. Last time I was with this group, we went into some detail on the processes we were going to take. And we still, as of today, continue to plan to move forward with that plan. That plan was based around issuing no more than $11.5 million worth of debt for all the projects that were highlighted by your architectural partner. That would also include no tax increases to the public, which would wrap around the debt to the existing debt that will be falling off over the next couple of years, especially around 2023 when there's the first payment that would be made towards this debt, which would also allow for future debt to be issued around 2025 or 2026 in the amount no less than $8 million for future projects for potential future boards to have the ability to decide what projects are of priority to them. Today signifies the first official step in issuing this debt. I believe that the entire board was provided with a copy of the timeline that is currently projected up there, and I'll allow Dennis to go into further detail on that timeline. But as you can see on that projector, September 14th as the kickoff. The final item you will have on there will be on March 17th, which is the date that we'll actually have proceeds at hand to fund the projects. One thing that I would like this entire body and the public to keep in mind, when we start seeing documents and approvals, it will be based around the $11.5 million number. That doesn't mean that has to be the number that this body will approve. It could be less. That will ultimately be the max parameter. And we may go above that slightly to allow for some minor adjustments, but ultimately, I want to emphasize that the numbers that we start the process with doesn't have to be the process that we end up with. We can go down, but we cannot go up from that number. So a lot of times, there's a lot of concern around not having finalized numbers from architects. And I just want to assure this body that we have, and I'll allow Landon to chime in here. Landon, what would you say prior to that March 17 date that you would need to have a final number before finalizing the sale?
Yeah, typically prior to, you guys getting feedback?
No.
Okay. Anytime about 2 weeks prior to actually pricing bonds, we can modify the project budget based on new estimates, revisions by the board, contingencies, et cetera. So probably a month before that March delivery, Oscar.
So that allows you enough time to go out to bid out your architects, your construction managers to get a better number. They'll understand that that is the maximum number they have, and they can always work down from that. So that I believe is the process this body has taken at this point, that you will be going out to bid out for architectural services. And once you select one, they'll have this parameter to work backwards from. The next time you see me will be with a different focus, which will be to work on your credit rating. This body is currently rated at an A-, which is investment grade. It is not a atypical credit rating for a school, but the goal will be to at least maintain that A- or improve it. In order to do so, my team will start looking at some of your internal policies, which will include a debt management policy. So if you have one, we'll look at that, give comments, or help write a formal one. We'll work on a reserve policy that will dictate how much is the minimum amount of money that you can have at any one time. You have been pretty good about keeping a cash balance, so we won't suggest anything that you haven't been doing, but we would like to formalize it to improve your credit. And the final one would be your investment policy. You have had investments in the past. I assume that there's a formal investment policy, and we also want to review or formalize that policy. The last item, which Randy alluded to, you guys already have a capital plan, which is usually the thing that most communities and schools struggle with. So you're already ahead of the game on that by having that. So we'll review all of this and start working on what is going to make your credit stronger so that when it comes to paying for that interest, it will be lower for you, which will allow you for less chances of increasing taxes in the future. I'll stop talking there for a second. Last time you had a presentation, this body was going to have a chance to review it and ask questions next time you saw me, so I want to allow you the opportunity to ask anything from the information that was provided to you last time, if there's any questions you have. All right, well, that is all I have at this point. I don't have much more to say. That I'll allow Dennis to go over the timeline, and I'll allow Landon to briefly speak about what their role is and how these get priced out to the market and what trends he's seeing with other schools around, similar geographic areas where interest rates would be at a A-. But with that, I'll turn it over to Dennis to go over the timeline with you. Yes,
Oscar,
sir.
real quick, the bond rating improvement, what have you seen schools do in the past?
Well, there's not a whole lot you can do when it comes, so you're rated on several factors, and some things you just have no control over. For example, the economy, there's very little the school district can do around what the economy is doing around you, what businesses are coming in. That is really something more that is under a county or a city control. I mean, other than providing a great education to attract businesses, there's very little that.
So it's really an impact of the community, right?
So the one thing that you can work on is a criteria called financial management, and that is 20% of your overall score. And part of that is they want to see how often you get presented financials from your business manager, how often you review finance, how often you talk about them. And then they also want to see formal policies. It's great to say we're not going to invest in Apple stock, but it is better to have it in writing to say you're going to follow state guidelines which dictate what you can and cannot invest in. And even though it is doing exactly what you're doing by memorizing it and providing that to S&P, it just boosts up your financial management score, which is really what this body has ultimate control over, and that's where we hope to improve upon to at least maintain or improve that. Another piece is the debt piece. There's not much that you can do on the debt you already have other than the fact that you will probably get a small bump because a lot of it's falling off over the next 10 years, and we'll try to emphasize that to Standard & Poor's. But again, most of the things that they rate you on, it is surrounding the entire metropolitan service area, the overlapping debt that units have, such as the townships, the city, and so forth. So we will focus on what we can control and providing the best light. It would be good to have a working group of somebody from staff and from the board to be involved from this point forward, so that as these things start happening, somebody can speak from your behalf and from staff's behalf.
Awesome, thank you.
Anything else before I turn it over? All right, Dennis.
Thanks, Oscar. Good evening, members of the board and public. It is nice to meet you all. Good
evening.
Can you hear me okay? All right, there we go. All right, here we go. How about that? First off, nice to meet you all. Beautiful campus, by the way, driving in here with the mature trees and everything. I always like coming to North Manchester. Oscar mentioned a timetable. I'll go over that briefly. I think I'm looking at the one that maybe been an earlier draft that's on the overhead there. We made a few tweaks to it this afternoon to accommodate a little bit more time. But essentially, the schedule is pushed out from that timetable about 3 or 4 weeks. And the reason for doing that is we want to make sure that there's enough time for the school board to hold informational sessions with the public, get some outreach and be able to take in information and input about the project and answer questions members of the public might have. That is in addition to the numerous public hearings that are required by statute to be held on this project. So we'll go through that in a bit. But as Oscar mentioned, this is really kind of the true first formal step in the process for this bond issue. Kind of having this informational meeting before the board. Our next step would be on October 12th for the board to meet to adopt a resolution that does a number of things. It will establish the hearing dates that will be coming up for the bond issuance. It will also authorize reimbursement from bond proceeds of any cost the school might incur in the project leading up to the actual bond issuance that they want to be reimbursed for. And I won't bore you with the details, but there are federal tax rules that effectively say you can't reimburse yourself from bond proceeds unless you've adopted what they call a reimbursement resolution, acknowledging that you plan to do that. We'll also do some information with a building corporation, authorizing appointment of appraisers and the sale of certain real estate over to the building corporation. And I wasn't there, but Oscar may have touched on this in some of your prior presentations, but this will be a lease financing. 99% of school buildings in Indiana are financed through a lease financing, and the reason is because of the constitutional debt limit. We'll have a building corporation in place that will lease the improvements to the school corporation. The school corporation will make lease rental payments that match the debt service on the bonds. And there's some old case law out there that says that's not a debt for constitutional law purposes. That's an operational expense. And I can tell you your three outstanding lease bonds that are outstanding right now, they've been set up the same way. So we're kind of following suit in case anyone wonders why we keep talking about a lease. So October to November, we will kind of work through some of those informational work sessions. I'll be coordinating with Mark's office on some of the real estate matters to identify the properties that we'll want to have as included as part of this financing and start working on some of the title work. Part of the changes in law recently used to have to hold what they called one preliminary determination hearing. We now have to hold two for a project of this size before you adopt what's called a preliminary determination resolution. So we're looking at doing that in late November and early December. So your December 14th school board meeting would be the second preliminary determination hearing. We'll also hold what they call the 1028 hearing at that meeting, and sometimes folks call this the project hearing, but there's some old statutory reference. We commonly call that a 1028 hearing. That's a hearing where we kind of talk about the need for the projects, the improvements that are contemplated for the bond issue, and the tax impact. And also at these preliminary determination hearings, we'll have a presentation for the board and for the public that will disclose quite a bit of financial information about the tax rate, the tax impact, the debt service schedule, things that will be required to be available to the public at those hearings in case there are questions about them. Once we get through those hearings in late December, we'll advertise the notice of preliminary determination. Now, due to the size of this project, that starts a 30-day period when a certain amount of registered voters or taxpayers can circulate a petition and request application of the public question process. Now, the test is it's the lesser of 500 signatures of registered voters or taxpayers or signatures of 5% of the registered voters in the school corporation. This timetable assumes that a petition like that is not received. If one is received, and that time frame will be January 21st if we follow this to the suit, that will kick off a whole separate set of processes where this matter, this financing would go to a referendum, and at that point, we would have discussions with the school board about whether you want to take it to referendum or you want to push pause, and then the steps that would be needed to actually get that on the ballot. But we always do these at the outset of assuming that we get through that process so you can see what it would look like going to a full bond issue without that petition being received. So we'll have some board meetings in January, and we'll have the building corporation meeting as well. we're contemplating using a new building corporation. We've seen your old building corporations. There's one for the elementary school and one for the high school. And we'd recommend that you do a new building corp that's kind of a multi-purpose building corp that can be your building corporation for all of your projects, if that makes sense. You could have the same members you have on your existing building corp, but I think just sort of going forward for the school, that'd be kind of a nice planning thing to do. And we'll take care of incorporating that building corporation. There's not much to it. We would also, at the January meeting, hold what would be the final public hearing on the lease. That would be a January 11th. Once we get through the 30-day period on the petition, assuming there's no petition received, the school corporation will execute the lease with the building corporation. We then have another 30-day notice period that we have to advertise. We'll complete that period in February, and February is when we really get hot and heavy on the bond issue. We're contemplating that Landon's team, working with Oscar, will have the official statement drafted at that point. We'll have applied to the rating agency for a rating on the bonds. We'll get through that 30-day objecting period on the lease and be ready to go forward with a bond sale in early March and have the proceeds available on March 17th. As Oscar mentioned, these dates can change, but part of the process we do on these bond issues is as we go forward, we'll check these action items off. If a date changes, we'll modify the timetable. We'll keep everyone involved with the working group fully apprised as to the timing. Because things can and do pop up, but normally we follow these pretty closely. So I think this is a pretty good estimate. I've also talked with Oscar and Landon's team about this timetable, and Mark and Dave have had an opportunity to review it as well. Now, before I turn it over to Landon, are there any questions, comments you all have about the timing process? Anything I can answer?
Have you ever had any schools not make lease payments? And what happens if they don't?
Good question. They always make the lease payments, or at least they better make them. If a school corporation fails to make a lease payment, that is a default unless the building's been destroyed. Okay? If the project is completed, if the school building is available for use and occupancy, they are required to make a lease payment. If the school the way we structure the lease payments is they're actually due 15 days before the actual bond payment is due. So you make them to the trustee 15 days in advance. If that trustee doesn't have that lease payment 15 days before the bond payment's due, by operation of the documents, first they're to notify the school to make sure there's not just an administrative slip up, but then they're to notify the treasurer of the state of Indiana that there's been a failure to make a lease payment on time. And if you all have ever heard of the state intercept mechanism, it essentially is kind of a backstop of the treasurer of the state of Indiana where they will go ahead and make that lease payment, and they'll effectively pull it from tuition support payments that would be due the school to make that payment. That is the absolute assurance to make sure that bondholders get paid on a timely basis. And it's very important for the credit of not only this school corporation, but all school corporations in the state of Indiana. There's an understanding in the bond marketplace that the state intercept mechanism is there as a backstop for payments on these lease rentals. If any of you are around, kind of go back in your time machine. There was an instance about, Landon might know this or Oscar, but there was a school probably about 5 years ago.
2014.
There you go, 2014.
Monster.
That missed a lease payment, and I remember it was like at the end of December, and the intercept mechanism was late to kick in, because frankly, I don't know that it had ever happened before, so there was some confusion about the timing to contact the state of Indiana. But as a result of that, those procedures have really been kind of ratcheted up. The rating agencies have looked at them, and we have special language in place to make sure that doesn't occur.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board questions?
Okay. Landon, Josh, I'll turn it over to you guys if you want to chat a little bit about what you're seeing.
Okay, thanks, Dennis. Members of the board, thanks for having us. Landon Bain with Robert W. Baird. My colleague Josh Janak is on as well. Baird is a longtime Indiana-based company, formerly known as Hilliard Lyons. merged in 2018 with Robert W. Barrett out of Milwaukee, become yet a bigger financial firm, which seems to be the trend lately. We can answer a couple questions and then give direction on where our role fits in general. We're primarily responsible for financing the project, so at the end of the day, we have to cut the $11 million check, and in doing that, we want to get everybody, including the school corp, in a position of borrowing on the best terms and in a way that's best suitable for the school. Through that process, we work through diligence, we work through credit review, and with Oscar and Dennis's teams, we take you through the timetable, and specific to the financing aspects, the rating process, documentation, and ultimately setting terms that are going to garner the best borrowing terms for the school. Like Dennis said, there's a lot of regulations around tax-exempt debt. With that, we're all focused on that. Mark and his team will be focused on that as well in terms of some of the affirmations that get executed by the school at the end of the transaction to the federal government, in effect, stating that you'll be compliant with certain restrictions of the code. And at the end of the day, it all culminates in a financing that helps the school borrow at ultimately what is some of the lowest cost funds available to anybody in the entire country. Lately, we've been financing about 10-year debt near the 1% mark, 20-year debt. Last year, earlier this year, it was really hovering right around 2%. It's been up around 2.25% lately. But you compare that to going and borrowing a mortgage note, and the school's definitely got some benefits afforded to it through tax exemption through the federal code, and then also the Indiana state enhancement, which you will qualify for under the ratio of state aid available over debt service. So I think it was Dave that asked about what you can do for rating, but Manchester's in a good position as far as debt load already. You've been good custodians of the that side of the balance sheet, and the preliminary plan of finance that we've crafted that really alleviates debt service over time is very proper for a good stable credit going forward. With that in mind, Oscar's team in the policy review is going to help maybe give an effort towards boosting that rating or maintaining it. But like he said, a lot of the factors that flow in there are certainly out of our control as far as manipulating the different variations of the criteria. So anything that we need to be focused on as far as what the school's mindset is from a borrowing perspective, that's our job to pay attention to, and ultimately help the financing culminate to one, funding the projects and making sure that you're not borrowing too much either. So with that, I can take questions.
Board? Superintendent? I guess we don't have any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
I just want to end with answering the question about what happens if you miss payments. We'll also be selecting a third party, which will be a trustee and a paying agent, to ensure that those payments are being made so that it never gets to that point. We'll also make sure that there is a policy for continuing disclosure, which is your annual compliance that you have to have for bondholders. Those are things that we'll be working towards when we're going through the policy review to make sure that those types of things get handled.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Board.
Thank you very much. Kyle, did you have recognition?
Sorry?
Do you have recognition?
No.
Okay. Financial report, Randy? Thanks, guys.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Members of the board, in your board pack is a financial update. This is primarily going to focus on the month of August, but it does go back to calendar year 2019. So the first several pages are your funds, chart of accounts. I'd like for us to start getting a little bit familiar in looking at this. So if you look at the far left column next to your education fund, you'll see that revenue exceeded expenditures, which allowed for our cash balance to increase by $116,000 from the last month, from July. And I'll show you how that correlates visually on the next few areas of the financial update. So the next few columns are your year-to-date. And you can see that we've actually spent more in our education fund than what we've received in revenue. And so overall, from year to year, from August to August, we've had a decline of about $142,000. And so this is just a page broken out by primarily at the very beginning is going to be your local funds. That's going to be your education fund, your operations fund. Those are the funds that we're going through tonight through the budget process. And then your local funds, so your grants, your donations, those are going to be in your 2000s. As you go on, the state funds are going to be in your 3,000 funds. Federal is going to be anything that's 4,000 and above. So as we get to Title I, like for example, CARES. And then at the very bottom, you're going to have your payroll clearing accounts. So as a business manager, I kind of like to focus on that current balance, that very far right column. I want to make sure that things aren't poking out to me as a negative, and then I'm going to pull expenditures and revenue for the month, but overall from year to year so that I can start to monitor that. I want to put that as a digestible format for you guys because you don't like to look at all these numbers and go, what am I looking at? But I think if you focus on just the primary funds at the beginning, those first few funds, that's what I would like for you to maybe start asking some questions about at each board meeting, just to more or less just get familiar with what you're looking at the fund report. So the next few items, the next PDF, I believe, is called the cash balance, the monthly cash balance. I think that's the second one that you've got there. And so we'll flip through to the third page and focus on August of 21. And so this is just, I wanted to give you guys some context for the last few years, right? So calendar year 20 and calendar year 21. I did remove the Hoosier Fund. As we've discussed at the last board meeting, we're going to work in September to disperse that back into those appropriate funds because it is not earning the appropriate interest that your checking account is earning, okay? So I went ahead and added that, so that's not going to be reflective in the fund report, but it is in this cash balance because I think that it's helpful to view it that way. So your overall cash balance, if you're looking at August of 21, is going to be $916,950. That includes $580,000 that's still sitting in the Hoosier Fund, okay? But you can see month over month in the next column is to the good, right, to the positive, and then year over year you can see that difference for the 12 months. So this gives you a really quick visual to see where you were from the prior month and then where you were from the prior year. You will always see your levy-based funds, so your property tax levy, that's going to be your debt service and your operations funds. Those are typically going to fall from month to month in the hole. And that's not to be afraid of, that's just your cash flow. And the reason for that is because you're going to get your property tax payments in June and December, your settlements. So that comes when you pay your spring tax bill, when you pay your fall tax bill. The county will reconcile that and send that to you in both June and in December. We're going to work on getting some advancements, and so those are some of the steps that we're going to work for cash flow purposes to start getting those in even October and November. Another thing that's not listed right here is your enrollment is up. So what's going to be really good is that in November and December, you're actually going to see an increase in your tuition support payment. So we're going to hold those kids all the way till count date, which is this Friday. And so what will happen is the DOE will reconcile to our fall count number, and then we will receive more in November and December revenue than what we've been receiving from July to October. And so you'll see that revenue tick up and increase and reconcile itself for those 6 months. The same thing would happen for the spring count. So if February is up from fall, then they'll reconcile that in April and May and June. The next slide is gonna be really small on there, and that's just looking at your total expenses and revenues for the month. I only focus on education and operations, and to be honest, this is something I put together really quickly, but I think what I'd like to do is start to focus on those object codes. So at the next board meeting in October, I'm gonna zoom in on what this is for expenses and revenue. So what are we spending on salaries, benefits, professional services, et cetera, in our operating funds? So in education and our operations fund, and that way we can get a little bit down into the nitty gritty, but it's gonna take some time to generate some of these reports. As Oscar alluded, and Bose McKinney, these reports for S&P will be critical as moving forward. You're just gonna want a monthly report to get the pulse of the finances, and that'll be something that S&P asks for. So basically, we're gonna take these and hand them over to S&P when we do our rating call, along with those policies that they had mentioned before, and that'll allow for us to hopefully get an uptick this next rating call. But I'd be glad to answer any questions.
I don't have a question, but I do have a request for next month. Can we make the font bigger and get a printed copy?
Yeah, get a bigger
Please.
one. Yeah. Zoom in on
The
it.
screen ain't big enough.
Absolutely. Good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, consent items. We have a couple corrections on the minutes. Just like to call the attention to the board. From August 17th, we had 5 ESSER hires, not 4. And on 8/30, the original minutes were posted. We corrected a couple of issues on the motions to get them in chronological order. That's, we can go ahead and got our regular claims, prepaid claims, payroll claims that were all in your packet. I don't see any grants. We have some donations. Mr. Booker, would you read the donations, please?
Sure. Donation of $50 to the junior senior high school FFA program from the anonymous donor. Donation of $240 to the junior senior high school cheerleading program from North Manchester Congregational Christian Church. Donation of $250 to Manchester Junior Senior High School cheerleading program from Tri-Oaks Realty. Donation of $325 to Junior Senior High School band program from band shirts and from Bit Computers. Donation of $325 to Manchester Junior Senior High School band program for band shirts from Peabody Retirement Community. Donation of $325 to the Junior Senior High School band program for band shirts from Metzger's Landscaping and Design. Donation of $621.70 to Junior Senior High School FFA program from Helena Agri Enterprises, LLC. Donation of $800 to Manchester Junior Senior High School cross-country program for the 2021 cross-country invite from Three Rivers Running Company, Inc. Donation of $113 to Manchester Junior Senior High School marching band for alterations from Kelly Louvier. Donation of $400 to MCS Special Education to be divided into $100 for each school's special education program from anonymous donor. Donation of $250 to Manchester Junior Senior High School FFA program from Southview Farms, Inc. Donation from $150 to Manchester Junior Senior High School cheerleading program from Manchester Alive. And donation for $500 to Manchester Junior Senior High School cross-country program and $500 to Manchester Junior Senior High School tennis program from an anonymous donor. Thank you, everybody who donated.
Okay, and also on the consent agenda, we have it was in your packet, a request from the Old German Baptist Church Youth Group for October 17th from 12 noon until 8 p.m. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Mr. Brubaker,
I'll second. I'll second.
Mr. Esposito, seconded. Any discussion?
Yeah, I just want to say that, there's 13 different donations here, from different community corporate or organizations, individuals, and it's going to 6 of our programs for almost a total of $5,000. So that just shows how much the community of North Manchester supports these programs. Everything costs money, and so it's great to have these people who are out there who are supporting the programming and the students who are benefiting it. So, thank you to everybody who did donate.
Any other comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, accept the consent agenda, signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Okay, motion approved unanimously. Move into recommendations for approval. Employment for personnel. This is certified and classified staff. Candace Wells, long-term sub for science. Kimberly Steffen, daytime custodian. Betsy Keeger, tech media assistant. Kathy Shoemaker, RISE special ed teacher. Reagan Bellinger, kindergarten aide. Tanya Immel, MAO business manager. And approval of business manager contract and addendum to the contract between MCS business manager Tanya Immel and MCS. So I would like to do all of those with one motion unless somebody has an objection to that. Mr. France? I would entertain a motion to approve personnel, certified and classified staff.
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Bucher,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Esposito. Any discussion?
I just want to
Questions?
say that in order to have a great corporation, we have to have great people. So I want to welcome all of these certified and classified staff for today.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Questions, discussion? All in favor? Signify by aye, raise your hand. Motion carries 7-0. ECA staff, Amy Ambrose, 7th grade field trip sponsor. Allison Kaufman, girls head basketball coach. Daryl Danford, JV basketball coach. Kristen Buck, MES first grade chairperson. Allie Kaufman, MIS intramural volleyball coach. Tricia Dolby, intramural volleyball coach. Carol Collett, intramural volleyball coach. Alyssa Eddy, intramural volleyball coach. Morgan Calloway, intramural volleyball coach. John Kaufman, volunteer girls basketball assistant coach. And Jen Birch, assistant basketball coach. I would entertain a motion to approve the ECA staff.
Can we clarify Daryl Danford as boys or girls JV basketball coach?
I couldn't hear.
What'd you say?
Can we clarify Daryl Danford as, it just says JV basketball coach, is that boys or girls?
Girls, I think.
I don't know, it doesn't say.
I don't know the answer to that.
I'm not going to dispute it, just for reflection in the minutes.
Which one, boy?
Missy thinks it's the boys. Any other questions, discussion?
Are you not including Heather Turflinger in this one, or are you moving it down?
She's a separate line item on,
Okay, thank you.
A motion to approve?
have a
I'll se-
motion.
I'll second.
A motion by Mr. Esposito and a second by Mr. Raymer to approve. Any questions, discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand. Aye. Motion carries 7-0. We have resignation of certified classified staff, Elizabeth Hall, MES special education teacher, Tova Wagon, long-term substitute, and Jabin Burnsworth is resigning from the science department chair. I would entertain a motion to approve those resignations.
So moved.
Mr. Brubaker,
I'll second.
Mr. Raymer. Any discussion?
I'd just like to say thank you to Mrs. Hall, Ms. Wygand, and Mr. Burnworth for everything they've done for Manchester Community Schools.
I concur. Anybody else? All in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. Mr. Whelan, you want to do this retirement?
Yeah, so the next up was Joanne Allen for retirement. She's been a custodian with Manchester Community Schools for 24 years, and she's not retiring until December, so we're going to invite her back at that time to recognize her fully. So, this is incredible, 24 years with the corporation. I've known her for a long time, so I do, it's awesome that she's getting to retire, but we're certainly going to miss her services.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion to approve her retirement.
So moved.
Mr. Raymer?
I'll
Mr.
second.
Brubaker? Any discussion?
If we don't vote for her, does she have to stay?
I'll let you take that up with her. I would like to thank her for 24 years of service, too. Any other comment? All in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand. Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Approval of policy 3290, MCS hiring policy. There was an amendment. This would be the second reading. Motion to approve it.
I'll move to approve.
Mr. Esposette,
I'll second.
Mr. Brubaker seconded. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. I need a motion to approve Heather Turflinger as the MIS intramural volleyball coach.
So moved.
Mr. Esposette,
I'll second.
Mr. Booker. Any comment, discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
We got 6 and all abstain. Motion carries. Board, you have an approval, or RFP Architectural Services was in your packet. It's a request for proposal to advertise seeking the written proposals for architectural services for approved building projects slated to begin in the spring of 2023. It was in your packet. I'd entertain a motion to approve that to send it out for advertisement.
So moved.
Mr. Raymer,
I'll second.
Mr. Brubaker, any discussion, questions? Okay, all in favor of sending this out for advertisement, signify by saying aye and raising your hand. Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Addition to policy 3220, you want to explain this one, Kyle?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, it's 3220, it's changing the wording, adding the word.
Okay,
And-
I'm sorry, yeah, so anytime we do a hire, we're making a recommendation, the school administration is, but it's always pending board approval. So this was with the, if I remember, I don't have the policy right in front of me, so if I remember right, this is the one for the teachers' grants, is that correct? And so, the adjustment is just making sure that it's board approved for it to be finalized, so.
I'd entertain a motion to approve the change to the wording to policy 3220.
I'll move. So moved.
Mr. Esposito?
Second.
Mr. Raymer? Any discussion? All in favor signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Rick, did you have your hand up?
Just a vote.
Oh, yeah, it was a vote. You voted yes?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
yes,
7-0. Okay. Approval of job description for a new part-time assistant business manager position. Kyle?
Yeah, I'll talk about this. So, one of the things I commend Manchester Community Schools on is that we've actively pursued a lot of grants out there, some of them being competitive grants, which a lot of schools don't do. And unfortunately, once you receive all the grants, which we have, there's a lot of documentation and paperwork and accounting that needs to be done on top of that. Sue Janegi, who's our curriculum director, has basically applied for these grants and managed these grants for quite a while now. In total, we have 11 federal grants that we're working on, 7 state grants, and 8 competitive grants for a total of 26 grants that she's currently working on as she's continuing to apply for new. The problem with that is it's consuming an awful lot of her time, and we still need her to be the curriculum director. There's a lot of things district-wide that we need her to be doing, working with the different buildings. And so I'm proposing that we add a position to mainly help assist her with the accounting and documentation side of the grants. So Mrs. Janegi would continue to write the grants, but then after those are awarded, then this new position would work to do all the documentation, the reporting that's required to, be in good standing with that grant.
Could you clarify how many hours a week that is?
That is up to 20 hours a week. We figured about 4 hours a day, so that is a part-time position.
Okay.
Would this also include the permission to advertise this as a new position
Yes.
for the hiring policy?
Yes.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve the job description and advertising for the new part-time assistant manager position?
I'll move.
Mr. Hensley?
I'll second.
Mr. Brubaker seconded. Any further discussion or questions?
Kyle, maybe this, do you know how many dollars worth of grants we've received in the last year, roughly? Just so the public has an idea of why we're pursuing this and what it's costing us or not costing us?
Sure. The competitive grants alone, which she has sought out herself, is over $300,000. The state grants total about $120,000. The federal grants is the big one, and part of that is the ESSER funds that we're receiving. That's $3.4 million. So, the money that she's helping to, and there are some other people, employees who are helping to work on some of those grants, but the majority of them, especially the state and the competitive grants, all fall under currently the director of curriculum.
Thank you. I was just if anybody had any questions while we were doing this.
Absolutely.
Any other further questions or discussion? Okay, I call the vote. All in favor, raise your hand, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion is unanimous. I'm going to let you explain 7.82, Kyle.
Okay. So I'm looking to create a position for a temporary contracted medical professional to help support our school nurse. Obviously, with the additional things that she has on her plate with contact tracing and things like that, it's important that we continue to be able to provide the regular medical services that all of our students require. And so, this is a temporary position, but we do want to advertise it so we can start to get a good person. And that position also will kind of be as needed. So, it will not be a full-time position, but I do think there's value in being able to support so that we're still able to provide the accommodations that our students need and then also tackle the additional workload that she has. So.
And just to be clear, that's done with ESSER funds?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Is a contractor contract?
That is correct. That is with ESSER funds.
No benefits, no?
No, correct. You are correct.
I'd entertain a motion to approve the medical professional services support for the school nurse.
So moved.
Mr. Shaw? Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Bucher seconded. Further questions, discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Whelan, what type of, or where do you think we'll find this? Is a person like this available, readily available, or?
I believe so, and that's, we listed it as a medical professional instead of an actual licensure because we're not sure who is going to apply. And so there's going to be a range of possible pay scale for that. We want someone with medical training and, we'll just have to collect applications and hire that most qualified person. So it'd be really nice to find somebody, but I also know the medical field is pretty thin job-wise, so we're hoping for the best, but understanding that really we just want someone with that medical experience.
And I'll apologize to the board. I should have made a note of this at the beginning and I missed it. This in your packet was actually described as an RN, but what we found out is Parkview Health is paying $40,000 sign-on bonuses. We're not going to, we can't compete with that.
And I'm not recommending that, just
Yeah,
so, okay.
me either. So,
Well, and that's what I want to caution in the fact that, her load's overburdened now from the contact tracing and quarantine, right? So is there any other opportunities, I don't know, like interns or?
And I don't know that for sure. That's something we can certainly explore if you guys decide you don't want to at this position at this time. I could look into that. So.
okay, so this is worded to approve to secure a temporary contracted medical professional to support the school nurse. This is a new position, so I need you to clarify, are you asking for permission to advertise this?
I am asking for permission to advertise.
Okay, and then it would come back to the next board meeting for approval of the hire?
Correct. Correct.
Okay, now does that fall under the normal contract? If you need to call a service company or something like that,
We'll explore what our options are as far as if we can find an individual or if it needs to be an actual service company. And that'll be in the terms we propose. It is an as-needed basis, and so if it's something that we no longer need, then we phase that person out.
Mr. France, can we add this to our special meeting on the 23rd and approve this?
To approve what? I thought we were just
If
advertising.
he finds somebody who wants to approve the contract and we advertise the meeting on the 23rd as a special meeting, can we approve it then?
Yeah.
Okay, so all we're really asking for is tonight is permission to advertise for the position.
Correct.
Okay.
I have a quick question on, just to clarify, temporary. I assume it's still this subsides somewhere. Is that the temporary part of it?
Yeah, because the additional load that's put on the school nurse is for the circumstances we're in right now. So it's not, MA's been doing this for a very long time, and we haven't had to
Sure,
bring in support
sure.
services. And, you know, as, you know, things progress or decline, then we can make that determination as far as what the future
Very
of
good.
that looks
Thank
like.
you.
Yep.
Any other further discussion?
If we're going to address this issue, when are we going to get serious about addressing a mental health professional?
With the rain, I can't hear him.
That was my conversation with Kyle today, and I think he answered that satisfactorily in the fact that this is temporary, and that's kind of a different deal, because I asked the same question, you know, I don't want this to exclude, you know, or the need for that, so.
I understand, Mike, but we've been talking about it for how long?
I know.
And Mr. Raymer, I agree with you, and that's something I have on my to-do list. So I do hope to make some progress in that area and report back to you guys soon.
Any other further discussion or questions? Okay, all in favor of giving permission to advertise this position, signify by saying aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Looks like it was unanimous. I didn't miss anybody, did I? Okay, 7-0. Kyle, are you gonna do the review of the teacher appreciation grant?
And
we did
if you
that.
could do that, that'd be great. My computer's over in my office. I'm sorry, I don't have a copy of it.
Oh, okay. That's, it was the 500?
I believe so.
Okay, let me catch up here. It's typically a formality. We have to approve paying the stipend for the teacher appreciation grant.
And that's,
Please.
Okay. So, I'm gonna start talking. Each September, the board shall approve the teacher appreciation grant. There should be no changes to this. So, effective teachers will receive 25% less than highly effective. That's in Indiana code. And so we will likely get our allocation by November, and then we have 20 days to issue that payment to teachers. So typically that'll come the first pay in December. But there should be no changes to your teacher appreciation grant, but it's a shall provision that you shall look at it and approve it each year. And then the superintendent will then send it on to the DOE to the appropriate people within the TAG department. And I'm just gonna
Thank you
stay up
very
here for
much.
the next item.
Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Mr. Raymer,
I'll second.
Mr. Brubaker, any further discussion or questions?
I just want to thank Miss Libby for bailing me out on that one. So I'm getting there, but thank you.
No worries.
Yeah, my computer shut off too, so. All in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Yeah, I'm gonna say, she might as well stay there because this next one's you.
Yeah. So next on your agenda is the consider to approval of updates to the 21 monthly transfer resolution. If you recall, we discussed this during our August workshop. And so the only provision that I'm making here is a suggestion to take the amount up to where you're already transferring. That gives the business manager some flexibility, the board flexibility. I'm not asking for more to be transferred. I'm in fact looking to potentially entertain the option of transferring less. And so what that will do is allow for any time beyond this board meeting for September, October, November, and December of this calendar year, we could have the option to transfer less from the Education to Operations Fund. Shall we think that that would be necessary based on cash flows? So this is identical to what you would have approved in January. The only two words would be added up to.
And this is the one everybody has to sign, the additional appropriation, right?
This is just permission to advertise tonight. So what I will do is then take the advertisement. Actually, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the next one. No, this is something that you'll approve tonight, so it'll be adopted tonight, and then that'll make that September 14th stamp for the DLGF. because leading up to September 14th, I shall transfer that amount. This just allows the flexibility to transfer 0 or transfer up to that 69,720. So the board will move to approve this evening if they choose, and then we would sign in the appropriate section.
What was the amount again? 69 what?
It's $69,720.25 per month.
I would entertain a motion to approve the additional appropriation resolution.
No,
Huh?
sorry, this is the monthly transfer resolution.
Monthly transfer resolution. Did I get it right that time?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'll
I typically don't make
Second.
the motions, but I did on that one. I just
move.
need somebody to
Rick,
second it. Okay. Any further discussion or questions? So Mr. Hensley made the motion and you seconded it. Okay. We'll make sure we get that right for Missy. Okay. Any questions? Discussion? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. Okay.
The next one is permission to advertise. So this is permission to advertise tonight. We won't be adopting this resolution. I'll bring that back during the budget process and have this adopted in October. The reason for the additional appropriation is for the 2021 budget, there's not sufficient funds appropriated to continue out and pay for the rest of the expenses for this year based on historical trends. So I'm requesting that in October we approve, but right now I'm just asking for permission to advertise the $1.5 million to be added to the appropriation for the education fund. In the accounts for regular programs and special ed programs, so that's going to support primarily instruction. The other two items, and I should stop there, this is a typical budget for you. So Manchester typically has about a $10 million line 1 appropriation budget. This year in the 2021-1782 notice, it was 8.3. So this gets us back up to that close to $10 million for 2021's budget. Below that is our debt service fund. Our 2020 December payment was not made until January of 21. Therefore, we need additional appropriation to support that $173,000 payment, which is why I'm asking for additional appropriation for that fund.
I need a motion to grant permission to advertise for additional appropriations for the 2021 budget.
So moved.
Mr. Raymer,
Second.
Mr. Shaw, any further discussion or questions?
Why didn't we make that payment?
I asked the same question. There was a miss in communication from the trustee to the treasurer.
Any other further questions or comments? All in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
This will be brought back for October 12th for approval.
Okay, I need a motion to approve Heather Turflinger as the Manchester Junior Senior High School Assistant Girls Basketball Coach.
So moved.
Mr. Brubaker,
Second.
Mr. Raymer. Any comment, discussion?
Is she qualified?
I can hear you. All in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Okay. 6, and I'm going to abstain. 6-0. 6-0. Heartland update. We continue to meet with architects and try and finalize the plans. Going to try and get Randy to post a video tomorrow. I neglected to do it today. they had their maiden flight we received a $50,000 grant and bought a drone. It's a sprayer drone for the kids to learn how to fly. It's one of the new technologies. Farmers will be able to fly over their fields, probably a contract. I don't think every farmer is going to go buy one, but they have spot spraying that they need to do or spot fertilizing that they can do. They can do this with drones. Pretty neat technology. I'll try and get Randy to post the video on our website for tomorrow. Mr. Hensley, legislative update.
No activity currently legislatively, no problems, so. No, I think one of the things we have to take a close look at is the new governor's order for the mask regulate, or the mask continuance for the contact tracing and quarantine. That's still a little fuzzy in my head, so I think, more direction on that, which will help us in determining, how we handle our current health situation. So,
At this time, we'll open it up for public comments. Okay, superintendent comments?
Yeah, so first of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Darnell. We had a great day yesterday, and I want to thank him for all of the work he did. One of the things that I was working on yesterday is, with me being new to this corporation, there's a lot of things that I've missed out on in the last years, and even just this year. And there's some things that I think I would benefit from and the board would benefit from, as far as soliciting information from students, teachers, and from their parents and guardians. And so in your board packet, I did include a survey that I would like to send out hopefully by Thursday. And so unless there's any objections, I'll plan on getting that put together and sharing that out. So. Want to also welcome Tanya Emmel and her husband Chris. Tanya is going to be our next business manager, and hopefully you're with us for a long time. And I apologize because this is an area I'm pretty green in, so you're going to be responsible for teaching me a lot along the way. So I want to welcome her to this community and to Manchester Community Schools. She comes highly recommended, and I'm really excited to get started with her. I'd also like to say that this afternoon I had a chance to meet with members of the Manchester Teachers Association. I'm looking forward to continuing to build a strong relationship with them as we move forward. The teachers are the most valuable part of our corporation, and so I encourage them to keep doing the amazing things they do, and I look forward to continuing to meet with the MTA moving forward. I'd also like to thank Mr. Gutierrez, Mr. Otten, and Mr. Boehm, even though they're not still here for their presentation. One of the things I wanted to update you on, I did talk with the sales engineer for the fob system. Today they were here finishing up the wiring, and I'll be honest with you, he used a lot of terms that I did not understand, but the one that I did is next week they should start actually installing the system into, so they should be able to start working on the doors, and we should start having fully functional. So a lot of terminology didn't know about, but that was a piece. They are working on the installation timeline, and as soon as they get that to me, then I'll share that with the board members. And then last of all, I just want to say, with the survey piece, I know that there's, community members who don't come to the board and share. They might not send out an email to let us know what's going on. They might not email me. But the only way we can get feedback on topics that are going to help us be better is if people take the time to fill them out. I found that in the past, surveys can be a great tool. And one of the things I want to encourage at the very end of the survey, it's kind of an open-ended question. And I've gotten so many great ideas from community members, parents. It's one of those that it's like, oh yeah, I saw this on Facebook, or my nephew goes to school out in Nebraska, and this is something they do. Sometimes we need to bring in those outside things, and we have 1,500 students and 1,500 sets of parents and guardians and 200-plus employees. And so I'm hoping that all of you take the time to fill out that survey. I assure you that I'm going to read every single one of them. And so please, I do value your input. The board values your input. But we're not going to know what you're thinking unless you do share. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Wheelan. School board comments?
I'll make one. Like to commend every human in the high school. My kids say it's a little toasty in there. And for their perseverance, the teachers and other professionals in the building. I ran into Jack earlier today, and we have the right person on the job, and I'm sure the building will cool down a little bit as soon as he can make it happen. So I appreciate everybody kind of sticking through what I'm sure is kind of a challenging time.
Anybody else? Okay, I got a little something here I want to share. The board makes policy based on recommendations from our staff, our administrators, and the superintendent, and the community's needs. And the school's done a pretty good job of moving things forward. We have SACA Industry 4.0. We've installed dual language kindergarten, increased pre-K, STEM certification. Industry 4.0, we're only one of 2 school districts in the whole state that are doing that. We got precision ag at Heartland. We're only it's one of 5 schools, and we're part of that. And STEM certification, we're one of the very few in Northeast Indiana that's STEM certified K through 12. So I just ask all the community to give some grace to our staff and our administrators. This board makes our policy, and the staff has to make those policies work. And I would ask, if you're not happy with the policy, or if you like the changes that we've implemented, like our hiring policy or the committees getting things done. I'm sorry, I lost my place. Committees getting things accomplished. For a few examples, the hiring policy. The board members' email addresses and phone numbers are on our webpage under the board tab. I would ask that you direct any concerns regarding policies that you're happy with or you're unhappy with to the superintendent and to the board. Our principals have a job to do every day, and our staff have jobs to do every day, and it just distracts from their mission when they have to take emails. If it's something between a student and a parent, that's their job. But if it's something with this group right here, talk to us. That's just all, and just give them a little bit of grace. They're working through some pretty difficult times right now. Anybody else got anything else to add?
Apparently they know me at my email, so there's no shortage of emails to read lately.
They found mine too. But like I said,
I think just to reiterate, MCS we have a lot of good things going on. You look, this little virus comes along and it interrupts not only here, right? It gets our community. It's funny, how fast things can kind of fall apart when something comes along and we have a point of contention like this. And the big thing is, man, we have to look at root cause. We have to, do problem solving and come up with sustainable solutions through this stuff. But hopefully this thing, we can get through this and get back to the growth that we're seeing and the kind of good times. To be honest with you, I actually had fun there, a couple board meetings for a while, so, I'm looking forward to the future is all I can say. So.
Any other board comment? Kyle?
Good.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion. Oh, go ahead, Mr.
I'd like to say thank you to and I'll say this again next week, but thank you to the work for the committee that's been working on, the advisory committee that's been working on things recently. They're not finished yet, but they'll be done soon. So I wanted to say thank you today, and then I'll also thank you later for their work and their time.
Thank you for the reminder. Next meeting will be September 23rd at 6 PM to receive the committee's recommendations right here. So, and it's on the website. And with that, I would,
I'll make a move to adjourn the meeting.
there you go. And I was second by Mr. Esposito.